All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally rewire how you view those agonizing, frustrating hours spent avoiding the exact work you genuinely want to get done. We all know the feeling, right? And we've all beat ourselves up over it. But by the time we wrap up here, you're going to walk away with a completely new, scientifically grounded framework for understanding your own behavior.
Think about it for a second. Have you ever sat down at your desk fully intending to absolutely crush a big project, only to tell yourself, you know what, I'll just check my phone for 5 minutes. And then, 2 hours later, you emerge from this scrolling spiral. The project is completely untouched, and you're just drowning in this heavy wave of guilt and anxiety. You promise tomorrow is going to be different, but tomorrow, the exact same thing happens. Well, if this sounds even slightly familiar, you need to understand something right now. What's happening to you, it's not a time management problem. For generations, society has basically conditioned us to believe that delaying tasks is some sort of moral failing. We've been told that if we just yell at ourselves louder or feel enough guilt, we'll magically find the strength to get to work. But science proves the exact opposite. Procrastination is not laziness. It is absolutely not a lack of discipline. It's actually a biological coping mechanism that's literally designed to protect you from stress.
Which brings us to our first main point, the biology of avoidance. To really grasp this, we gotta travel back to an era when survival was a literal daily battle. Just imagine our ancestors out in a dense jungle. A rustle in the bushes meant a predator, like a tiger, and that required an immediate involuntary reaction, fight, flight, or freeze. Fast forward to today. You're sitting in a comfy chair, staring at a blank document or maybe a massive spreadsheet. Now, clearly, there are no tigers here, yet your chest tightens up. Why? Well, it's because your ancient brain actually cannot tell the difference between a literal physical predator in the jungle and the psychological discomfort of a difficult task. Crazy, right?
The organ pulling the strings here is the amygdala. Think of it like your brain's ancient emotional smoke detector. Its primary, unyielding job is just to keep you safe from danger. So, when you face a task that brings up deep self-doubt, or potential failure, or just grueling frustration, your amygdala reacts by slamming the alarm and demanding an immediate escape. It pumps out stress hormones to protect you from what it mistakenly thinks is physical pain, when really, it's just emotional discomfort.
And here is how the trap gets set. To escape that discomfort, you reach for your phone. Boom, you get a hit of cheap dopamine, and you feel this temporary, soothing wave of emotional relief. But then, you lock the screen, and reality hits twice as hard. The deadline's closer now. You don't just feel stressed about the work anymore, you feel intense guilt and shame. All that internal criticism actually lowers your self-esteem, which makes the task feel even more threatening the next time you try to tackle it. So the massive takeaway here is that punishing yourself with guilt, it just increases your stress. It's literally like pouring gasoline onto an open fire, locking you right back into the self-reinforcing downward spiral.
Let's move right into our second section, the 4 mental archetypes. To actually conquer this loop, we have to take a hard look in the mirror. Because what's really fascinating about this breakdown is how it maps out the specific root cause for different people. It proves without a doubt that procrastination is not a one-size-fits-all problem. I mean, you can't cure a perfectionist with a fancy time management planner, and you definitely can't cure a dreamer with a vision board. They require completely different psychological solutions because the underlying fears driving them are completely different. Let's start with the perfectionist. If this is you, your self-worth is entirely tied to your performance. You believe this really dangerous equation, that your work equals your fundamental value as a human being. So naturally, the stakes of just starting are impossibly high. You delay because never starting means you never have to face the horror of producing something imperfect. By waiting for the perfect moment, you're keeping your ego completely safe from the harsh critique of reality. Or, maybe you're the dreamer. The dreamer absolutely loves the intoxicating feeling of planning, but completely despises the grueling reality of execution. You might spend hours visualizing your success, mistaking the dopamine hit of imagining these elaborate projects for actual tangible progress. But the very second the work demands deep focus and actual mental strain, reality gets boring. The dopamine plummets, and you abandon the project for a shiny new fantasy.
Then we have the final 2. The worrier is driven by this chronic fear of the unknown. They're constantly running a relentless stream of what-if questions in their head. so they just freeze, choosing the familiar suffering of being stuck over the uncomfortable uncertainty of growth. And on the flip side, there's the defier. The defier looks at a deadline as this attempt by an outside force to control their freedom. They passively rebel by delaying things until the very last second just to reclaim their autonomy. But tragically, they just end up handing all their control right over to the tyranny of panic. Figuring out which specific root fear is driving you is the first real crack in the foundation of the loop.
All right, Section 3 dives into the paradox of productive procrastination. As you start to monitor your own habits, you're going to run into a highly sophisticated defense mechanism. It's this sneaky trap that completely eliminates the guilt of standard procrastination, all while keeping you entirely stuck. We call this productive procrastination. It happens when you avoid the scary, high-impact work by spending, say, 3 hours color-coding your digital calendar, or obsessively researching software settings, or organizing your desktop files. Your brain is going, look how organized we are, look how hard we're working. It gives you this complete illusion of accomplishment. But the painful truth? You're just moving sideways. You're not moving forward. Psychologists explain this through something called the friction gradient. Basically, brilliant brains will always choose tasks with the lowest psychological resistance. Tidying your room or checking analytics, super low friction barrier. Creating original content or making a really tough financial decision, massive friction barrier, because it forces you straight into the unknown. Your brain loves to just slide down this easy gradient, masking your underlying fear with meaningless busyness. And honestly, this is exactly how months or even years can just slip away without any true progress on your actual dreams. So let's fix it. Section 4, the neurological rewiring.
How do we actually dismantle this? Well, we absolutely cannot rely on willpower. Willpower is just a finite chemical battery in your prefrontal cortex, and it drains rapidly as the day goes on. And inspiration, way too unreliable. To dismantle a loop that's been hardwired by years of repetition, we have to build permanent neurological architecture. The first tactic here is the micro-step breakdown. When you look at a massive goal, it overloads your working memory and trips the amygdala's threat response. You have to artificially shrink the task until it seems absurdly, almost laughably simple. Instead of telling yourself to do a massive amount of work, your only goal is to open the software and do one tiny thing, like drawing a single circle. By lowering the entry barrier that much, the task requires zero emotional risk, and your amygdala stays fast asleep.
Now, the real magic behind this micro-step is something called the Zeigarnik effect. Discovered by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, it basically states that our subconscious mind absolutely despises an open loop. Once you cross the physical threshold and draw that one single circle, your brain experiences this intense internal tension to finish what it started. Suddenly, it wants to add a second circle. It gently pulls you forward, completely proving that motivation doesn't cause action. Actually, scratch that. It's the reverse. Action creates motivation. The next tactic is eliminating choice friction. Listen, procrastination absolutely thrives in morning ambiguity. If you wake up with just a vague, fuzzy plan to be productive today, you're going to drain your willpower battery just deciding what to do first. Instead, you need to create implementation intentions the night before. Decide your exact schedule down to the minute. Tell yourself, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I will open my document and write for 20 minutes. By completely removing all choices from the present moment, you transform an exhausting emotional struggle into a totally automatic behavioral ritual. Finally, our last section, protecting the sanctuary of focus. Because here's the thing, all these psychological tools, they won't work at all if you leave your attention unprotected. Remember, there are tech corporations employing brilliant behavioral psychologists actively trying to hijack your dopamine pathways for profit. Just take a look at the number we're showing here, 0. That is exactly how much cognitive energy you save if your smartphone is merely sitting on the desk within your eyesight, even if it's turned face down. According to a landmark study out of the University of Chicago, the mere physical presence of a smartphone reduces your cognitive capacity. Your subconscious brain is constantly expending energy just to resist the temptation of picking the thing up. Your willpower battery is quite literally leaking dry just by looking at the object. Procrastination is so often just an environmental design flaw. You simply cannot rely on self-control here. You must architect high physical friction between you and your distractions. Put your phone in a drawer in another room, or better yet, turn the device completely off.
By introducing actual physical steps between you and the distraction, you create a delay. And that delay is crucial. It gives your rational prefrontal cortex the split second it needs to step in and override the physical impulse. Right before your hand